Hash 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 the howl amongst the pines. Deep in the heart of the dense, unforgiving Glimmerwood Forest, shrouded in a permanent mist and bathed in an ethereal green light, lay the crumbling remnants of an abandoned logging town. Its wooden structures, long twisted and broken, barely rose above the underbrush, buried like forgotten secrets. Over the years, travelers and adventurers had dared to explore the eerie remnants, only to flee in terror, claiming to have heard the cries of something far from human. An article in a local newspaper stirred Leonard, a freelance journalist with an insatiable thirst for the truth. He had always been skeptical of monster tales, yet there was something particularly enticing about the legend of the Wendigo. Many claimed it lurked in the shadows of Glimmerwood, feeding on the lost souls of its former inhabitants, drawn by their despair. Drawn by something deeper than mere terror, Leonard set out to find evidence of the creature, pen and notepad in hand. If he could uncover the truth, it might just make him the talk of the town. As he made his way into the forest, the trees loomed over him like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches weaving a tangled web against the dim light. A chill seeped into his bones, the kind that spoke of more than just the cold. The local tales whispered of a fractured spirit that hungered for flesh. Yet he brushed away the cold fear that clutched at his heart with a smile, convinced that the only thing truly haunting Glimmerwood was the absurdity of a myth. Night fell quickly in the dense forest, smothering the daylight and giving birth to an unsettling stillness. Leonard found himself at the edge of the old town, where the decaying buildings were silhouetted against the moonlit sky, their rotting walls creaking softly in the wind. It was here, amidst the wailing whispers, that he set up camp. The fire crackled under the early stars as he took notes, recounting the tales he had heard in the village. But as the darkness deepened, something shifted within the air around him. All sound faded. The chirping of crickets and rustling of leaves ceased, leaving an oppressive silence. Leonard leaned closer to the flickering flames, his fingers itching to capture this moment on paper, unaware of the eyes watching him from the shadows. Suddenly, a howl erupted from the depths of the forest, cutting through the stillness like a knife. It was low, haunting, and primal, a raw echo that spoke of hunger and despair. Leonard's heart raced. He struggled with the urge to flee but was anchored to his spot, torn between the instinct to survive and the obsession with uncovering the truth. The howl morphed into a cacophony of cries, screams echoing through the trees, twisted and reminiscent of human anguish. Leonard's logical mind told him it was only the wind, but the deep-seated fear clawed at him, urging him to abandon his post. Yet, he refused to give in. He tightened his grip around his pen, ready to document the horror that lay before him. Through the veil of branches, a shadow emerged. It was tall, grotesque, with limbs that contorted and elongated unnaturally. Its eyes reflected the dying firelight, glowing an otherworldly hue, and its gaping maw revealed jagged teeth, glistening like knives. It was no mere figment of imagination. He was face to face with the legend, the Wendigo of Glimmerwood. Fear rooted him in place, and for a moment, time stood still. The creature stepped closer, the ground crunching beneath its weight, and Leonard finally broke free from his stupor. He turned to run, his breaths ragged and heart pounding against his ribs. But the forest had other plans. Branches clawed at him, roots tripped him, and the Wendigo's howl reverberated behind him, resonating with the weight of its hunger. Desperation surged through his veins as he ran, zigzagging to evade the creature's pursuit. The buildings of the old town came into view, a dark refuge in a sea of terror. He dashed inside one of the collapsed structures, heart racing as he slammed the door behind him. For a moment, the silence returned, the only sound the ragged breaths escaping his lips. But the respite was short-lived. The walls creaked and shuddered as the Wendigo threw itself against the door. The wood splintered, a chorus of bewitching growls echoing in the air, sending jolts of terror through Leonard's spine. In a moment of clarity, he spotted a rusty axe propped against a wall, remnants from the town's forgotten days. Instinct took over. Grasping the axe, he stood his ground, adrenaline coursing through him. The creature burst through the door like a tidal wave, its silhouette monstrous and otherworldly. As it lunged at him, Leonard swung the axe with everything he had. The blade connected with an ear-piercing shriek, splattering him in a grotesque mix of ichor and something more ancient. The Wendigo staggered back, revealing its true form, a distorted reflection of humanity, eternally starved and twisted. As Leonard stared into those horrific eyes, he saw flashes of his own despair mirrored back at him, reflecting the darkness that lay within. In a final act of desperation, he charged forward and struck again, yearning to finally end this nightmare. With one final howl that echoed through the forest, the Wendigo collapsed, dissolving into an ethereal mist that dissipated into the night. Leonard stood alone amongst the ruins, shaken to his core. The haunting cry faded, replaced by the rustling leaves, a cruel reminder that monsters, both within and without, would always linger. Glimmerwood would always be a place where the darkness whispered and shadows danced. And now, it held a new secret. Leonard slumped against the wall, the weight of what he had done pressing down on him like the night. The legend of the Wendigo would burrow deeper into the hearts of those who ventured near, forever entwined with the echoes of despair pressing upon the weary mind. But the truth had a way of feeding on the souls brave enough to uncover it, and Leonard wasn't sure whether he'd walked away unscathed, or if he had merely become a vessel for a new story of horror to unfold.